What's up? Busy day.
Are you still glowing from Saturday night, my friend?
Man, that was a fun party. Well, we've talked about it on here, but you celebrated, I don't know if you know the exact day, but you celebrated 20 years in real estate since you've had your license. So, uh, your
Yes, sir.
wonderful wife it just so happened that her birthday was on a Friday. And so she had you fooled for a while that y'all were throwing her a party and you were helping decorate. And you had told me several times, like, I can't go here. I got to go decorate this. I got to do this. It's the glow party. Yeah, y'all
Yep.
go all out. I mean, y'all don't just buy a cake and a little centerpiece or something
No,
like that. Y'all go nuts with everything. So yeah, your
she
house was
does.
decked out with the glow theme, and tons of people got to come over. Sort of, like you said, it was like this is how you would imagine your funeral might be. Maybe minus the glowing. I guess
Yeah.
you could do a glow theme, but yeah, the people that were there, it was interesting. It was sort of like, this is your life, Tavis Westbrook.
Yeah. 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 No, it was great. It was great. You guys did a great job. It's funny because I've planned parties before for my birthday and kind of expected, throw a big party and everybody show up and have a good time. Um, and we've done that. I've done that now a few times. I think for like my 21st, my 30th, and my 40th. I think I kind of orchestrated it and put it together. Everybody had a great time. So being surprised, I don't think I've ever had a surprise party thrown for me. So that was awkward in a way. And I also, Tabitha's obviously my wife and one of the most important people in my lives, and because of it, with it being her birthday, it was kind of like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean we're not celebrating you? No, this is for you. This is your birthday. So, fortunately, a lot of people still acknowledged her birthday and brought her gifts and things. And our wine fridge is officially full of wine right now. So,
There you go.
years ago when we put that wine fridge in, when we rebuilt the house, what was that? Like 6 years ago, and um, we always say we were going to have a party and stock the wine fridge party, right? Because it holds like 96 bottles of wine or something. So
Yeah.
it's pretty full right now.
I will tell you, I didn't realize that Pinot Grigio, you had said, because there was a little scare that she thought maybe you were on to something. And so she's like, maybe text him and just ask what kind of wine I like and try to, get him. So I didn't do it immediately because I figured 3 or 4 people in a row just out of the blue texting you like, hey, what kind of, like, I thought that would throw you off. But at one
Yeah.
point I said, what kind of wine is she like? Oh, Pinot Grigio. Well, I went over to Total Wine. Well, turns out Pinot Grigio is like one of the cheapest wines you can get. I just felt bad getting like an $8 bottle of wine. So I don't even know if it was good, but I'm like, I gotta spend at least $20. So I just was looking for something like that. There really just weren't that many expensive bottles of Pinot Grigio. So
Yeah.
it's at least she picked one that's not to get a decent bottle, you've got to go like $60 or something like that. So
Right.
hopefully
Yeah.
she enjoys what everyone brought.
Santa Margarita is probably up there in the price. I think it's around 2021, but that's kind of like her on a feel good day. I'm gonna
Yeah.
drink some Santa Margarita,
Well,
$21 bottle of wine versus a $9 Voga
this is
bottle
what
of
you
wine.
need.
Yeah.
This is what you need as a marketing firm to do. All you got to do is just come out with a cool looking bottle, and you just charge $35. Because idiots like me will walk in and be like, must be the best one. And you
Yeah.
just pick it because it's like, it's still not crazy expensive. This obviously is a good one. I'm gonna pick
Yeah.
it. And
The
then
more expensive one's got
kill
to
it.
be better.
Yeah.
It's got to.
That's what I thought. I was like, $20. It's got to be better than that $4
Yeah.
one. I mean, some of those were just insanely cheap, So anyway, she
It's
likes
wild.
Pinot Grigio. But yeah, you had a great time. A lot of, Brett Caldwell, who's been on the podcast, he got to come in. He had come in for the Keller Williams event down in Austin, and then he was able to time it to come up and hang out. So that was really cool to meet him in person. And then just a lot of people from the Keller Williams office for DPR were there. And then it was kind of, I had asked Tabitha, I was like, are you friend mixing? Because you have your marina friends and your vacation friends, and you got family. And so, yeah, they were all there, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm glad I got to glad I
Yeah.
got to kind of experience that, meet some other people and parts of your life. So
Yeah. No, thanks again for setting that up, man. I know there was, a lot of people that ended up not being able to make it, but we had a great turnout. It was fun. And like you said, you've been around. I think you've popped in before, different holidays when she decorates, and she
yeah,
definitely, goes all out. I mean, to the extreme of things that you don't even think of. And for me, being the husband and being in the house, and also kind of just being very organized and uh, somewhat of a neat freak, and not liking clutter and not liking things out of place.
yeah,
I'm like, what are you doing? You don't have
yeah.
to do that. Stop already. It's okay. Like, what are you doing? And then terrified that all this tape she's putting on everything to
Like
glow was going to
literally glow
start
tape.
peeling
Yeah,
paint and stuff like that after the fact and be a nightmare. So
yeah. Outlining everything
fortunately,
in the house with glow tape was
there
quite
was
the
no
chore.
no no casualties, but
Yeah. Well,
it
good.
was pretty amazing to be glowing inside the house and outside. Outside looked like Avatar to me. It was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Well, one
So
of the surprises, and this will sort of tie in other news for you, is you delivered Landon to college last week. I
yep.
delivered Luke to college. I went to Lubbock. You went to Plainview, and then 2 days later, Landon turns around and surprises you and comes back home. Comes back for the party. So
That was one of
uh,
those surprises that I'm uh, like, I'm surprised. What are you doing? Go back.
yeah,
Like,
please go study. I'm about to cut a very serious check for you to go study somewhere. So please go back.
like,
Yeah. So yeah,
please.
last week was a great. Like we didn't do a podcast. So last week was the first week in almost a year that we didn't get a podcast out. So it was a bummer that we couldn't. But I mean, it was such a crazy week for you. You've got all these flips going. And then y'all were going out of town for Landon. I was going out of town for Luke. You were getting ready for what you thought was Tabitha's party. And it was just, there was just so much stuff going on last week. And we tried several different times, like, hey, what about this 30-minute window? What about this and this? And it just didn't work out. So the first time in almost a year that we did not get a podcast out. But so yeah, you got to deliver Landon. That was, Luke deciding to go to college was a pretty last minute decision. Landon getting accepted to go play basketball and deciding to go to college, it was even more of a last minute decision. And so you were thrown in like the last 3 weeks. It was like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm playing basketball, and here's where you write the check. So
Yeah.
very different.
Yeah. We're very, very excited. I mean, I think, and we've talked about this, throughout our journey on the podcast with our kids being seniors and kind of the roller coaster ride of, we don't know what they want to do. We just want them to, follow their dreams and passion and ambition. And, they're wired different than we are because, the hunger is different, right? Like they're spoiled kids at the end of the day. They don't have to want for anything. It's just a matter of, hey, you're at a point in time in your life, high school's done, what's your next step?
Yeah.
And where do you want to go? And us as parents are kind of like, okay, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And so it's a little different, it being on the side of it. I mean, for me, when I graduated, I was like, freedom, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
let's go. I was so excited just to not have to worry about going to school anymore and checking the box, right? It was
Yeah.
like just exciting for me just to go off and have the freedom to do what I want to do. And, like this time, I remember at 18, everybody's going back to school. And I'm like, I'm
Go
going to
work.
work,
You'd been
but
working
it
for
was,
3 years at that point. You're like
yeah, but it was
you're
like,
like the old
it
man.
was just weird in a way, right? Like, I don't have to be in school. I can, take my lunch break and go. I don't know. It was
Right.
just weird. It was like kind of just this dynamic around me of everyone back in this restriction of school, and I was
Yeah.
able to, fly the nest and be
Yep.
me. So, um, but anyways, I'm super excited. He had his first day of class today. He's starting out, and yesterday was his first workout, and I think that's probably his biggest surprise because he's been somewhat doubtful, even though he's been very, very passionate, and we've been saying this for the last 4 years, really. If he goes to college, it would be to play basketball, and his dynamic has been, if I go to college, basically I only want to go to school if I can play basketball. And then we're like, hey, there's a whole academic side of this that we're technically paying for that is part of going to college. So, you
Yeah.
know, they go together. It's not one that goes without the other. You can't go and just play basketball and not do academics. It doesn't work that way. So,
Yep.
but surprising to us, he's decided that his major is psychology and
Cool.
wants to go in the path, and he's very passionate about it. In fact, he was a little like upset at first when he realized to get a PhD, he's going to have to do 8 years of school. He wasn't super excited about that. But when he sat down with the counselor and was going over his classes, he was so passionate about the reasoning for psychology and that he wants to relate it to sports therapy in the sense that he wants to be able to have conversations with kids and athletes about what they're going through and the challenges and the struggles that you go
That's
through as an
cool.
athlete by playing basketball or playing any kind of sport for that matter, and wants to have, wants to be there. He wants to help other kids. He wants to help kids through this journey because he's like, I've been through this, psychological mess when I was in my sophomore year. I made the junior varsity team for Plano Senior High, and then I broke my arm, and psychologically he was destroyed. And it took him away from the game for a while. He lost his love. He kind of became somewhat of a recluse. Instead of showing up at the at the games and being part of the team, he didn't do that. And so when he tried out his junior year, he didn't make the team. They didn't know who he was. Like
Hmm.
and he was completely beside himself. Um, and anyways, that's part of his journey. But
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. So for me as a dad, I'm very proud of
Yeah.
him just to follow a passion and go after it and go grab life by the horns big. And that's what I think it's what matters in life.
Yeah.
I think you want
Well,
something, go do it, man. Go
yeah. He
figure it
stepped
out.
out
Go
there
do it.
for sure. So, yeah. And, in a similar vein, I don't think we've talked, but last time I was heading out to Indianapolis, Luke's group was doing their finals out in Indianapolis. I don't think I've talked about it, but the group he was with that toured the country, he did that for almost 80 days or whatever it was, and got to sleep on floors and buses and all that. And his group has won the world championship 21 times. The next group
The Blue
closest is
Devils.
7, the Blue Devils. Yeah, they're amazing. They'd won three times in a row. But this year just wasn't their year. They lost a competition for the first time in 1800 days, and then
Oh
they
my
lost the
gosh.
championship. They got third, which they were disappointed, but they still got third. It's amazing. And it was a really cool experience to be there in Indianapolis and get to see him. And he came back with us, got to spend a few days here at the house, hanging out, went to Tech. And then I just talked with him yesterday, and he went over to a buddy's house, and he's like, I heard the marching band metronome, which we can hear from our house over at Hebron. It's real loud. And he's like, it's like flashbacks. It's like they kind of like listened to this metronome, found their way. They realized they were pretty close to a high school. They walked over there, and like the most random thing, I mean, not only was it a high school, but it's the same high school that his high school director over here in Carrollton started out at. So they knew who he
Wow.
was.
Oh
and
wow.
and so he's going to probably work there as a it's called a drill tech. So he'll show
Sweet.
up a few times a week, get paid to help him learn how to march and play and all that stuff. So that's what he was hoping to do, and he's wanting to get into show design with marching stuff. So anyway, he's finding his path, and hopefully he can figure out how to go to school in the
That's amazing.
process. So,
And
but
did
yeah,
you or your wife do band? Because I know both
no,
your kids like went that direction. So
no, Karen really never did music. I sang, I grew up singing, and I was disappointed when Luke didn't do choir early on. But the band infrastructure around here is just so amazing, and we just lucked into it. And he became extremely passionate. Where I mean, obsessively passionate, honestly. But I mean,
hmm
if you're going to be obsessed about something, then go ahead. But I mean, like last year, he made it a goal. I'm going to play every day, and so he played his trumpet every day, even on vacation in Cancun. Like no matter where we went, he took his trumpet and he played it at least for a few
wow.
minutes every day. And I mean, a lot of times it was for hours. So
hmm
he it paid off, and he's like that with health and eating. He's just kind of he's kind of obsessive, but he's figured out ways to be obsessive about really good things.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah. I mean, I'm super proud of him, and he's doing great. So I think Texas Tech will be good, and it's a big school, and hopefully he can find his place there, and and kind of make band his deal. But I was bummed because yesterday you were running around with Anthony, and I'm like, well, this is what Luke was supposed to be doing with me.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to go to college. He was going to come back, get his real estate license. We were going to pal around, go do real estate together. So you were doing that with Anthony yesterday. So we'll kind of transition some
Well,
of.
you have time because
Yeah,
Anthony's
yeah,
30.
yeah. He's and I think he could still kind of. I think he'll end up doing like a house hack or something like that. I could totally
Yeah.
see that. Buying something. And having his friends help him out, pay or whatever. So, let's get into. So, just a kind of a quick heads up on what you got going. You got a lot of flips going. You got Aaron's house is all blown apart, and I know that's where Anthony's helping you over there. I'm supposed to close 2 deals this week. My listing in Princeton's supposed to close, although it's they keep dragging the feet, but it's supposed to close Friday. I've got another house supposed to close. It's a buy on the buy side, close on Thursday, and I'm working on listing paperwork today for the Keller house I've talked about. But we did drone photos, house photos. We got a plan together. We're going to go ahead and list it, I think, for 1.2 million. That's going to be my largest listing ever, and so I'm excited. Now we can talk a little bit about the nervous part for me is the freaking paperwork. And I sat through this Zoom call the other day. I don't know if you actually saw that, but it's a mandatory Keller Williams pay attention to these new forms speech. And it was so confusing. It's like, okay, if this, all right, fill out form 2406 part B, check the first box. Do not check that second. If you're doing, okay, look, they're going to sue people. They're going to be out there trying to sue people. So and I was like, my head was spinning when I was like, this is recorded. I'll have to go back through as I'm doing my contract. And the compliance ladies at the office already hate me because they have to send back stuff constantly. Because when I do a contract, it's like, you didn't fill out this little, and I think they've just like cracked down on them because it's the smallest little detail that they're like, hey, you've got to do this and you got to do that. And so, yeah, this will be my first listing under the new NAR lawsuit. It went into effect August 17th. So I know you've done a few transactions, or at least received some contracts and with this new stuff. So what are your thoughts? We can kind of go into news a little bit right now. Let's go ahead and transition into a little bit of news, and we'll talk about the market later, but let's talk about a little bit of news. In the news is the NAR. The big one is the NAR, and all the rules. You can't advertise commissions anywhere on the MLS. You can't be creative and bold certain letters in your description and all this stuff, like people are joking around on the internet. But so, what is your take on the first week under the new rules that they say is going to change real estate forever and ever?
Well, now I'll say this. There's a couple things. One is the market has gotten weird, which I'm sure, in our market update, we'll talk about that a little bit. But it's gotten weird in the sense that, and I mentioned this with the property we had in Garland last week, that we had a tremendous amount of showing or a tremendous amount of social media activity, went live, went to the market, had about 4 or 5 showings over the weekend. They just kind of trickled through the weekend. Ended up with 2 offers. Was supposed to get 2 more. It's technically multiple offer situation. Got a really attractive offer. Ended up executing, and that's great. But out of what we always talk about, kind of 10 for 1, we didn't even have 10 showings on it. So it was very bizarre. We listed another property here in Plano. Happens to be my son's house. That he's selling, and we put it up on the market last week. It went live Thursday. Slow activity trickled through, got some showings, had some agents from the office wanted to hold it open. Very, very nice house, very cool house. And showings just kind of trickled through, not getting a lot of feedback, not getting a lot of information, just very kind of weird. And right before we got on the podcast, I got a call that I got an offer sitting in my email. So I had no idea that was even coming. Like it's just weird. It's hard to gauge it. It's going to be interesting to kind of see how this is. Now, I will say, on the other hand, I'm getting phone calls and I'm getting text messages of other agents asking if we're paying commission or if the seller's paying commission on this deal. And it's created this kind of weird predicament because when this all started and then the NAR whole thing started and I had my opinions, I still feel like a buyer's agent does a tremendous amount of work, and I still feel like a buyer's agent deserves 3%. So I'll put that out there. On the other hand of it, um, the way that some agents are coming at the situation, I feel like are definitely in the steering mentality,
Yep.
that they're coming to me first before their client even looks at the property, and they're asking that question.
Well, and
Is
then
there
and
is
that's what
there a
they were saying
commission?
on that Zoom call, and it's sort of framed in this, hey, my clients only want to look at houses where
Exactly.
you're covering all of the commission, which
Mm-hmm.
is ridiculous, honestly. That,
Yeah.
but I mean, I guess how do you refute that? But
Well,
if you're buyers and you think your agents out there like just marking houses off the list. I mean, if I'm trying to imagine myself as an actual buyer, and if I said, hey, I want to go look at this house around the corner, and then all of a sudden it's just, hey, we can't go. Like, I don't know how that would land unless you legit. And I really highly doubt most of these buyers agents have sat down with their clients and said, hey, I expect a 3% commission. So if we go look at something where they're not going to cover 3%, it's up to you. And then the buyer's like, oh, Janet, I don't want to do that. Only show me houses where they'll cover
mm-hmm.
everything. I just
Yeah.
highly doubt that conversation has been taking
Well,
place.
in this is part of this transition. For many years, and this is part of the problem. For many years, buyers agents, and I'm guilty of it myself, have been on autopilot in the sense that they don't have to have a lot of time spent talking about discussion with a buyer's rep agreement. There's not a lot of discussion there. That the selling point has always been, don't worry about my buyer's agent commission because the seller pays it at closing. Okay. Well, that is true because on the settlement statement it says seller pays buyer's agent commission X, seller pays listing commission X. The weird thing is our structure of our agreements have always been based on a listing agreement with a co-brokerage agreement, meaning that the listing commission has been set by the listing broker, whatever that number may be, and then there's a predetermined co-brokerage agreement within that listing agreement that says if there's another agent, that agent will receive X. But it's not being paid from the brokerage. At closing, that money is being paid from the seller. So I think that's part of the reason this whole lawsuit thing happened and why they won. Because at the end of the day, the way that things have been done, and you know how attorneys are in their legalese, as much as we can say what the intent is, what the listing agreement says, everything else, all they have to do is pull up a HUD settlement statement and show that the seller pays 3% to the listing agent, 3% to the buyer's agent. And therefore, what did the seller have to do as far as negotiating that buyer's agent commission when they were negotiating the sales price of the deal? So I think that's really, as I'm understanding this more and we're navigating through it, I think that's where the controversy becomes an issue, because it's kind of like you're predetermined that you're going to pay it, but ultimately it's not truly being paid out of the brokerage. It's paying from the seller. And why isn't this a negotiable item when a negotiation comes up? So, for instance, in the sales price situation, if somebody offers you a price that's less of what you're asking, and you're negotiating who pays title, you're negotiating who pays survey, you're negotiating if there's a home warranty in place, you're negotiating all these different factors. Why isn't commission been a negotiable item in the past? Why hasn't that ever been an issue, or a scenario that they can play with those numbers to massage it to make it work for the seller and the buyer? Why has that not ever been a thing? It's been frowned upon, right? Like brokers, obviously, we don't want to discount our commissions, but there's never really been an option to do that. That everyone kind of overlooks that piece. So essentially, now this is allowing us to throw that in the equation and net the numbers where it makes sense as a net. And for me personally, for the last 15 years buying real estate here in Dallas for my own portfolio, fix and flip, buy and hold, etc., I look at it as a net number to seller, right? Because the majority of stuff I buy, I don't charge myself a commission. I don't pay myself a buyer's agent commission. And I say that loosely in the sense that, yes, the seller may be paying it, but I'm paying for it in the sales price. So
Right.
if I take that out of the equation, I can buy it for a lower sales price. If I roll it into the deal, then okay, now I have cash that's being rewarded back to me at closing that I can now use towards my closing costs. Essentially, I'm just rolling it in the deal. So
Right. Right.
I think ultimately it's really not that complicated. What I don't like about the listing agreements is that they have made it complicated, that there's multiple different boxes to check. I don't
Yeah.
understand why it has to be so complicated. To
Well, and I
me,
think they're going to fix this. That's one thing they mentioned on the Zoom is they think
okay,
that they Texas is going to fix the actual listing agreement and the 1 to 4 possibly. All of this will be kind of tied into one or
yeah,
two
I'm sure
documents
it's just
at the
navigating
end.
through to see,
Yeah,
let's test the waters and see
yeah.
what happens.
Get from point A to point B. But I
I
do think
think,
you're right, where it's like on the buy side, you're basically negotiating the buy price. You're just working your commission into that. And if you come with a full price offer and you want to be paid, then great. But if you're discounting it, but then maybe it's been on the market for 40 days. Like, look, I'm giving
mhm,
you a really good offer. No one else is walking through the door. I want to get paid. Here's our total thing. But the
yep,
idea of these agents saying, "Hey, my people only want to see it if it's a full price." I think they're going to get. I mean, and they said, don't text this to anybody. Do not put this in writing that they can
mhm,
come back and say, "Hey, you said, as a buyer, can you imagine if you went back and you sued your agent and said, "Hey, I want to see what you were telling these other agents," and
yeah,
all of a sudden you've got
yeah,
19 texts that say, "Hey, we're interested only if it's," and they're like, "We never told you that."
right,
Like I think you could
yeah.
really get yourself in some trouble there.
Yeah,
So
no, I agree, and it's a little uneasy. Like I'm having some agents that are showing without any any questions at all. On the other hand, I'm having people that are reaching out and asking, are we paying commission? Is the seller paying commission? They're very strategic on what they're asking specifically, but when I say yes, the seller's paying concessions, which I think
concessions.
that concession is the way to go,
Well, and
which is
that's what our
actually
MLS is letting us put yes or no on concessions.
exactly. So if you and here it goes back, I understand now why EXP did what they did, because EXP is not saying that a seller can't pay commissions on behalf of the buyer. What EXP is saying is we are no longer going to entertain a co-brokerage agreement.
Yeah,
So therefore, EXP is not responsible for paying the buyer agent commission any longer.
they're
That is no
truly
longer an
uncoupling.
agreement.
They're
Exactly.
uncoupling. And they're getting ahead of the language.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
they're saying, look, the whole gist of this whole thing is they wanted to quote unquote uncouple this transaction, and the buyers pay
Yep.
for the buyer's agent, the sellers pay for the seller's agent, and we're going to completely remove ourselves from that. But they're doing it through, the actual route of you can do buyer's concessions, and
Right.
that's how it's always been. And
Right. They're just saying
it makes sense.
EXP is not going to co-broker it or
Yeah,
agree to the co-broker, which is, if you look on our listing commission or our listing presentation right now, I think it's section 5A and B, right? It breaks down. So there's a commission structure that says X amount of dollars will be paid on behalf of the listing broker. And then I think section B shows how much it will be paid to the buyer's broker, right? Well, I actually had an agent yesterday push back on me because they asked me, is the seller paying a commission? And I responded and I said, yes, the buyer is paying commissions, you know. Um, and so I said, yes, the buyer is paying commissions. Please, with your offer, submit an offer with form, what is it, 2406 and
2406.
2401, which 2401 outlines that the seller's paying for it, not a co-brokerage, which is 2402. So I said, make sure that you do that. Now, part of the reason I structured this specifically, it's kind of worked out in my benefit that these two deals are working this way. And the reason I say this is the first one was Garland, which is my own property. So there's not a listing commission in there. So the only possible way that commissions can be paid are from the seller, which my entity is the seller. And in my son's house, I'm not charging him a commission at all to list it. The commission is actually paying directly from the seller, which is my son. So therefore, it does fall in line with a true seller concession. There is no broker co-brokerage deal. So those listing documents, when you get to Section 5, actually are blank. They don't apply in this case
Yeah.
because there's not a commission there. But when you go to 12, I think it's 12F, I want to say, 12F breaks down, and then there's an additional form that gives you permission. So here's where I was a little bit off the other day. I had somebody reach out and said, is there a concession? Yes, there's a concession. Well, how much? And my response was, feel free to submit any offer you'd like, outlining everything, include 2406, include 2401, and I'll be happy to present this to my seller.
Yeah.
They didn't like that answer.
Ask for what you need. Ask for what you want.
Yeah, their response was, well, my buyer doesn't want to pay this, so my buyer's instructed us not to show houses that doesn't pay this. And I had another agent that asked, hey, if we bring you a full price offer with these terms, XYZ, spelled it out, would you be willing, is the seller willing to pay a full commission of 3%? Absolutely. Right? That is a great question to ask because it's specific. It's got boundaries. It makes sense. If you just ask, are they going to pay a full 3%? And I say full, like it's a fixed number. It could be 4%, could be 5%, whatever. But let's go off of the applied,
but I mean, you're saying like, don't
3%.
Bring me a $50,000 low offer, and I'm still obligated to pay you 3%. Like, do your job.
Exactly. So I ended up rereading the additional document that I had my son sign that said, with concessions, we're going to put a predetermined amount in here that the seller is allowing me to disclose that the concessions could be applied to. Now, I think that number can actually go beyond, 3%, obviously, because if you're offering up like a interest rate buy down or something like that with the deal, then you would probably put that in there. But in this case, it was, $13,500. And the first time I kind of played hardball a little bit to see how the other agent would respond. And I kind of gave her the example. And my example was, hey, if you have a buyer's rep agreement and it's paying you 2%, and I tell you that the seller's willing to pay 3%, and you bring me a full price offer, well, now I just screwed my seller by 1% that they could have saved or been more to the bottom line because, you just need 2% because you have a buyer's rep agreement that says you're going to get paid 2%, right? Yeah. So
they can't
submit
go
your
over that. They would have to do an addendum to that.
Right. So submit your offer that matches your buyer's rep agreement. I mean, I think it's just going to have to get more buyer's agents on board. You're going to have these conversations and these forms up front with your client and explain it. Now, Crystal from the office said that on the last several deals that she wrote this week, the listing side was paying less than 3%. Now, it could have been a half a point less, meaning they were paying 2.5% or willing to do 2.5% or willing to do 2%. And she wanted 3%, and she had a buyer's rep agreement with her clients, and her clients were happy to pay the difference. Yep. So they paid the extra 0.5%, agreed to pay it at closing, or 1.5%, whatever the number may be. And I think that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just having those set expectations up front to make sure everybody's good. It's just like anything that, we can't compare ourselves to an attorney because we don't practice law. But when we hire any other service, and I heard this yesterday on a podcast, any other service industry out there, you hire somebody to represent you, which a tax accountant, an attorney, any kind of advisor, the client hiring this person to advise them pays the fee. You know what I mean? Like there's an agreement to say, this is my value, this is my worth. I'm hiring you for your expertise, and I'm going to pay you X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
Real estate obviously has made it easy on us for the last 30 years that it's in there. Everyone gets paid equally. It's created true agency, which prior to this, true agency didn't exist. I think true agency will continue to exist, even though there's a lot of adversity, people pushing back, saying it's going to revert back to the old ways. I don't see that happening. I see it actually going in the right direction. It's just everybody's going to have to sharpen their skills a little bit on, one, understanding net math to seller, and two, having deeper conversations with their buyer client up front to explain how commissions work and who's responsible to pay them
Yep.
and what
Yep.
those numbers look like.
I agree, and I think it will. I'm actually happy because, and I may at some point put it out there. I think there's going to be some agents, especially on the buy side, that just don't want to mess with it. And like I've helped you out now once, and maybe here again on the buy side, because you're busy. There might be other agents out there that are pretty busy, and they just don't want to mess with the buy side of stuff. And I'm like, look, I'll do it. You bring it to me. I'll split it with you. I'll figure out all the nuances. And so I think there will be a market there for people that just don't want to tolerate that. But just in the other brief news that's local, we talk about restaurants a decent amount because we are the real estate heavyweights. Do you know? Okay, so if I said the Darden Group, which is really big, so they have Olive Garden, they've got Longhorn Steakhouse.
You used to have Red Lobster too, right?
That might have been a Red Lobster one that they got rid of. Well, Darden Group is buying the restaurant that I have probably spent more time at than any other. Have we ever discussed this? Do you know what restaurant is my favorite that I've probably without question spent more money and time at? If
Which
you had
one?
to guess, Chuy's.
Ah,
They are buying Chuy's, and
okay.
it's. I grew up going to Chuy's. It started down
Chuy's
in
Austin Chuy's in Austin. I think it was different than anything that has expanded.
Yeah,
I think
I know
back then
it was like
it not
different.
a franchise back then because it's not.
Yeah,
Chuy's was a staple when we went to Austin. That was like we had to go to Chuy's.
Well, I grew
And
up
now
there,
I don't know. Now I'm just not that impressed.
We would go to that original one, and it did feel different. And even the one here, COVID kind of changed it a little bit. But that each Chuy's used to have the happy hour where you would go get the nacho bar out of the back of like a '57 Chevy.
Yep.
And I remember the kids, when they were little bitty, we would take them there, and they would give them the tortilla dough, and they would sit there and play it like it was Play-Doh. Like we've just grown up going there. And for a long time, Chuy's was sort of my inflation barometer because we could go as a family of four and we could eat for about $33 or $30. And so anytime we would go anywhere else, it was like, okay, it was more expensive than Chuy's, but not better, or it was less expensive than Chuy's and pretty good. That was my mental checklist of how does this stack up to Chuy's. I still love a lot about Chuy's. I do think it's changed. And I do think going to a huge franchise like a Darden Group, I'm sure it can be good for a lot of things, but I think they're really good at systems and kind of keeping the status quo. And I mean, it could probably use some sort of breath of life into just, I don't know, it has lost a little bit of its character. So that's kind of a bummer. So yeah, favorite restaurant, Chuy's getting bought out.
What would you compare Chuy's to that's kind of taken over? I would say for me, it's probably like comparable to like On the Border, right? It's kind of like taking over that.
Yeah. And I don't do a lot of On the Border. It's not a Gloria's, it's not a Mi Cocina. It's a lower level than that. Maybe like an El Phoenix, kind of like a different vibe of an El Phoenix type thing, maybe.
A newer age.
Yeah, newer, funky.
El
but
Phoenix you used to try to be,
but it has that Keep Austin Weird vibe to it. They used to sell a ton of T-shirts that were really cool and funny. They've kind of cut back on the T-shirts. So I don't know. I mean, I hope that they figure it out. I can't imagine my life without Chuy's because I go there probably once a month, even now. But there's been times when I've gone a lot more frequent than that. So anyway, Freebirds, another local Texas burrito Mexican establishment, is all of the franchises are getting taken over by a huge franchise conglomerate that's based in Addison, Sun Group or something like that, Sun Holdings. They've owned a ton of just franchises all over the place. And our friend, the guy of the hour, the real estate man of the hour in Dallas, Shaquille O'Neal, he is finally opening his chicken restaurant over in Fort Worth on September 3rd. And I think I've mentioned I was on a cruise. They had Shaq's Chicken there. It was really, really good. Just kind of hot chicken and biscuits. And, it's sort of a, Chick-fil-A-ish type thing, kind of a small menu. But it was really good. And I'd always heard that one of the reasons he wanted to move to Dallas was that he was going to really try to launch his chicken franchises around here. I didn't realize he had tried to get traded here a long time ago. He wanted to play with Dirk, but he's always liked Dallas. Yeah, he grew up in San Antonio. I think Dallas has kind of been his place. And so I've been hearing some stories about him this last week. Why does he want to live here? Why does he want to live here? Well, I think he likes Dallas in general, but now finally September 3rd over in Fort Worth, Shaq's Chicken will be opening up a new location
Is
over
that
there.
what it's called?
I think it's called Shaq's Chicken. Yeah, I believe so. I want to say
like
that
big chick or big something. I thought it was something to playing off of his
it
size.
could be big. I don't know. Speaking of hot chicks over in Plano, also a fan. Closed. I went over there. It's a hot chicken. That's some of the hottest chicken I've had. Man, that makes you cry. Man. It's like, and they went out of business. So yeah, that was kind of a bummer. And I guess another real estate bummer / restaurant is the haunted Halloween restaurant right there. That restaurant location at the park and the tollway.
The one that used to be Tanaya's back in the day.
Yeah, but that place has been, that real estate corner has been doomed. That's like the McCormick's or whatever it was just south on the tollway that's been vacant for years and years and years. For whatever reason, stuff just does not succeed there. Well, this haunted themed restaurant went in there. And let me tell you, they've been open a week and they have like a 1.7% review on Google and Yelp. People
I didn't even know. I think I mentioned that, but I have not. That is wild. So it's a haunted restaurant.
It's a haunted theme. It's like someone said it just feels like a Chipotle that happened to be sponsored by the Spirit Halloween store. It was just this normal-ish restaurant. The waiters aren't dressed up. They're not playing into it. The service is supposedly really bad. I want it to work out because that restaurant, that little corner right there seems to be prime real estate.
The building, it was not cheap to build that building.
No.
I mean, that building was had to be early 2000s when that thing was built, because they had another one in Las Colinas, and it has like a tremendous amount of like
stucco,
like wood, like it's like got a lot of wood and exposed beams and big timber inside, and like very Colorado cabin feel to it. And the original idea, Tanaya's, was like a Native American type of cuisine. And they would serve buffalo and elk and rabbit and a lot of things like that. And
it was never in business. It has not been in business since I lived here.
Yeah. Well, it was good. I mean, I remember going to it in Las Colinas, and it was really good. And then it turned into a Mexican restaurant probably 2009 or somewhere, 2010. It was like a Mexican restaurant for a little while.
I wonder if the ranch over in Las Colinas took that location over. Is that where the ranch is? Because that's what that feels like.
No, it's not the ranch. The Cadillac, what it used to be called the Cadillac Ranch, but maybe it's just the ranch now. No, that was something else originally.
Yeah.
That would be on the south side of the road, and I don't know what it is now. I know it's something. It's obviously some other type of restaurant, but
well, I know you got to go. So we'll real quick, we'll touch on the market because we always do that. Not a lot's changed. 4.6 months of inventory. We have 40,000 homes on our MLS that are for sale. The shows to pending is 13. The interest rates are around 6.5. So that is still trending in that direction where we are stacking up inventory. And I would imagine as we get into school and home sales slow down a little bit, maybe some of the listings will slow down. But if I had to guess, there'll be a little bit of a lag and some stuff will stack up. And so if we get to 44,000, that will be a 10-year high. So that's the number I've been kind of keeping an eye on because we're creeping up on a 10-year record as far as inventory. And as you are putting stuff on the market for flips and I'm about to put an interesting property onto the market, it will be really cool to see how things play out over the next few weeks. If you have not, please like, subscribe, share this podcast with a friend. We had a really cool experience, real 1-minute story. You ran into someone the other day that did not hear about our podcast from a friend or from you or from me. They were actually searching on Spotify for Dallas Real Estate Podcast, and they stumbled upon two good-looking gentlemen based in Collin County talking about the real estate, and she has really enjoyed it. She's a little behind. I think she's on episode 50, but that's awesome.
Shout out to Katie Bader.
Yeah, that's really cool that someone just found us out there, and we're trying to hold it down for the Dallas-Fort Worth real estate news and market. We're doing it in a way that's not trying to plug this, our businesses left and right. Hopefully it's bearable and tolerable. So anyway, if you have not, though, please share this with a friend. We would love to be able to grow and have more people on board as we take this journey together. Congratulations, Tavis, on 20 years in the real estate business. It's been awesome to know you and your business in the last couple of years and being able to play a part of that. But definitely congratulations there. And until next time, have a great day.
See you guys.